Dead Man Walking, penned by Sister Helen Prejean in 1993, chronicles her first-hand experiences as the spiritual guide to 2 death row inmates at the Louisiana State Penitentiary during the 1980s. Despite Sister Prejean's efforts to advocate for the commutation of their sentences to life imprisonment, both men faced the death penalty. The book was later adapted into an Academy Award-nominated film in 1995, featuring Susan Sarandon and Sean Penn. In June 1981, Sister Helen Prejean, a Catholic nun working at the St. Thomas Housing Project in New Orleans, is approached by a friend from the prison coalition with an opportunity to become pen pals with Patrick Sonnier, a death row prisoner. Despite her reservations, Helen agrees and initiates a correspondence with Patrick, who was convicted, along with his brother Eddie, of murdering a teenage couple and raping the female victim. As Helen delves into the history of capital punishment, she grapples with her personal stance against it while developing a connection with a convicted murderer. She applies to be Patrick's spiritual advisor and is granted approval. During her prison visits, Helen learns about Patrick's background, growing up impoverished in rural Louisiana with Eddie. Patrick dropped out of school after his father's death, becoming a truck driver. Despite Eddie's eventual confession that he was the one who shot the couple, Patrick faces the death penalty again after a retrial. Helen, feeling conflicted, seeks legal assistance from Millard Farmer, an attorney in Atlanta. Farmer attempts to appeal Patrick's death sentence on the grounds of ineffective counsel, pointing out errors made by Patrick's original lawyer. Despite their efforts, both the Federal Fifth Circuit Court and the Supreme Court reject the appeal. With only a few days remaining until Patrick's scheduled execution, Helen endeavors to secure a pardon from the Louisiana governor. Simultaneously, Patrick partakes in his final meal and mentally prepares for his impending death. During a prayer session with Helen, he confides that the only love he has ever known in his life is from her. Despite Helen's efforts, the governor denies Patrick's pardon, leading to his execution by electric chair. Helen, alongside the victims' families, witnesses the somber event. Before his demise, Patrick bequeaths all his belongings to Helen and leaves heartfelt lines in a Bible for her. Following Patrick's execution, he is laid to rest in the nuns' cemetery next to Sister Isabel, a companion of Helen. Around 30 individuals, including Helen and Eddie, attend the funeral. Deeply affected by Patrick's death, Helen establishes a training program for those aspiring to become spiritual advisors for death row inmates. Later, Helen learns about another death row prisoner, Robert Lee Willie, who received a death sentence for a violent 8-day rampage, including the murder of Faith Hathaway, the rape of another young woman, and the shooting and paralysis of a young man. Helen agrees to serve as Robert's spiritual advisor. While participating in a march against the death penalty, Helen encounters opposition from counter-protesters, including Vernon Harvey, Faith's stepfather. During a meeting with Vernon and his wife, they share the tragic details of Faith's abduction, rape, and murder by Robert. Helen, despite her sympathy for Faith's family, decides to support Robert. Robert proves to be less sympathetic than Patrick, expressing admiration for Hitler, belief in Aryan superiority, and a desire for destructive acts. He refuses to take responsibility for Faith's murder, blaming his accomplice, Vaccaro. As Robert's appeal and pardon request are denied, he becomes increasingly anxious and remorseful leading up to his execution. He requests a lie detector test to prove his innocence, but the results are inconclusive due to his heightened stress. Helen shares his final meal and engages in a conversation about his racial prejudice before witnessing his execution. At Robert's funeral, his mother collapses upon viewing the open casket. Throughout the book, prevalent themes include compassion, spirituality, redemption, justice, retribution, cruelty, and death. Helen emphasizes the moral ambiguity of the death penalty by portraying executed inmates as individuals with families, emotions, and a past. While acknowledging sympathy for victims of violent crimes and their loved ones, Helen contends that the death penalty fails to provide genuine peace or resolution. She meticulously describes the execution process to highlight its barbarity and dispel the myth of its nobility or humanity. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.